Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have Peter Winick. He's the founder and CEO at Thought Leadership Leverage. He's helping leaders monetize their thoughts. He's been on Friends podcast, top guy right there, a podcast host, managing director at Firazi Greenlight previously, which is a great organization that I've studied. So we're going to have fun today. This one is brought to you by podpair.com. This is my podcasting company. If you want to launch your own podcast and increase your thought leadership, generate leads, sponsors, and AdSense money, you can go to podpair.com. Pete, glad to have you on. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, so two primary things. There's the business and then there's the podcast. So the business takes up a majority of my time. So that's Thought Leadership Leverage, working with authors, speakers, academics, thought leaders from around the globe. And then we've got a podcast that's been out about 7.5 years, 600 something episodes.
And why start the podcast? Is it a lead gen strategy? Is it a thought leadership play? Tell us about the thesis behind that.
Yeah, so it's changed. The initial thesis was, like everything else, it's an experiment, right? Let's see. And the hope was to, elevate the brand a bit, see how it resonated in the marketplace. And then, anytime from a marketing standpoint, we do an experiment, we're always tuned into how is it received and how is it different from the original hypothesis? Well, it is good for the brand, but ultimately it has evolved into a really, really cost-effective lead generation tool, as well as a brand builder and a way to build relationships. And it happens to be a fun way for me to get content out there on a consistent basis through a platform. So,
what is thought leadership? I've always been a leader. I've always been a thinker. So for me, deconstructing thought leadership is like, it's always been second nature, right? And then I do it, become better at it, and people just love what I say, it seems. What is thought leadership?
Well, so I would say you could be a leader. You could be a leader that's also a thinker, or you could be a thinker that's not a leader. But those two together don't necessarily make someone a thought leader. So to me, a thought leader is, there's two components to that. There's the thought. So what is the original thinking that you're bringing to the table? That might come from research from academia or other research that you've done. It might come from your life experience. It might come from the role that you have, the exposure you have to certain clients, et cetera. Or it could come from synthesizing ideas across different industries, different philosophies, whatever the case may be. So first step is the thought part of thought leadership. And then the leader part is where do you have the courage to lead the conversation, to lead the dialogue, to lead the thinking in a particular discipline in a way that it might not have considered before. And that doesn't need to be a 180-degree turn. The world is flat, the world is round. It could be a small incremental piece. It could be a nuance. It could be, let me just add this little bit of seasoning to the stew, if you will, around how I view leadership or how I view management or resilience or creativity or agility, whatever the case may be. And that's where you put the two together, because there's a lot of people out there that are really thoughtful, but they're not thought leaders because it's not original, right? The ideas that they're putting out there. And a lot of people out there that are leaders that are grinding away and doing what they need to do on the business side, but it doesn't mean that they're thought leaders. They might be an industry leader.
And do the number of followers, engagement define you as a thought leader? Do you need to be popular? Do you need to have the approval of mainstream to be a thought leader?
No, absolutely not. So I think that is a mistake that a lot of people make, is chasing metrics that are nothing more than vanity metrics, right? So I've seen thought leaders that have followers in the hundreds of thousands, almost 1 million. There was one I'm thinking of on LinkedIn that couldn't do anything with that. Right. So the trick is to find out with a high level of certainty and specificity, who's your market, right? Psychographically, demographically, whatever the combination is you choose to define it. And those are the folks that matter. So I would argue that there might be cases where you have a thought leader that might have the right 200 or 1,000 or whatever people following them. And that's far more effective than efficient than someone out there that's got, 50 or 100,000 bots or whatever out there, or the wrong demographic of folks that can't take advantage of the ideas that they have, can't pay for the services and offerings that they've got.
And who's your ICP? What are their demographics and psychographics?
Yes, we have a few. We've got academics. We've got nonfiction business authors. We've got keynote speakers. We've got what we call legacy CEOs, so leaders in business that have become really accomplished in their field, and now they're looking at what's next. They've sold the business, they're leaving the role, whatever the case may be, and thought leadership is something that's of interest to them. We've got thought leaders that have been practicing for years and years and years and want to take a step back and do less of the stuff, but move their ideas into other formats, other modalities, other vehicles, so that they can live on, so that they can democratize that intellectual property. More people can be exposed to it, and it can be monetized, but it's not dependent on them being at a Zoom call at a specific day and a specific time, or in a conference in Las Vegas on a specific day and a specific time.
And how do you find them? How do you reach out to them?
Well, we have three ways that clients come to us. One is inbound. So we have a lot of stuff out there. We've been doing this a long, long time, and we're consistently putting out what I hope is perceived as high quality thought leadership stories, examples, videos, podcasts, etc. So I think of those as strategic mousetraps. So somebody might be listening to this episode today, or in a week, or in a month, or in a year, and they go, "Oh, wow, that guy sounds kind of interesting. I should reach out." So that's our inbound piece. We've got lots of things in the right places to force people to sort of come out of their transfer moment and go, maybe a conversation with them would be worthwhile. Then we've got targeted outbound. So at any given time, we have at least one agency on retainer, as well as a marketing team internally. So we know people leave breadcrumbs, right? People leave clues as to who they are and what they're doing and all that. So we follow those and have a variety of marketing programs there. And then, sort of the old school, old fashioned referrals. I've built out a really slick referral network over the years of other folks that are serving the same types of clients, but in a different way. So not doing the same things that we do, but have that high level of trust with that person. So when they say, "Hey, you know what? Based on our last conversation, you might want to have a conversation with Peter, because he worked with people like you and does things like this." And then we refer clients to others as well, because we don't want to be all things to all people. We know what we do and what we do well, and we know that there are other needs that those clients will have that we won't fulfill. So let's find a trusted partner that we can hand them to and be confident they'll be treated well.
Right. And how do you distinguish yourself from all these other thought leadership agencies and consultants out there?
Yeah, I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about that. That might sound arrogant. I don't think there's all that many out there. We've been doing this for almost 20 years, so I don't really worry about the competition. I don't come from that scarcity mindset. The pie is big enough, and we don't really. I mean, this might sound terrible too, but we don't really lose when it comes to a bake-off. Go talk to others. Go find others. You'll probably come back and want to engage with us, and if not, that's okay too.
Let's take this from an abundance standpoint. How are you the best at what you're doing?
How?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any other firm out there that's worked with as many world-renowned thought leaders that that have had the outcomes that we've had, that have the reputation that we have, etc.
And what do you do specifically for your clients is what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, yeah, that's a different question. So yeah, I mean, the way we work with our clients is the first thing that we do is we develop a strategy, because in my experience, most thought leaders never got around to it. They're operating with an antiquated strategy, a broken strategy, or non-existent strategy, right? They sort of get into this space sort of willy-nilly or serendipitously, whatever the case may be. So step one, you got to have a strategy, and a good strategy gives you two things. It gives you clarity, and once you have clarity, you can most effectively prioritize what you could do, would do, should do against a set of goals and objectives. Because otherwise, you don't get in the car and then start driving randomly and say, "Oh, today I'm going to this person's house or that person's house." You have a destination in mind. This is where I'm trying to go. What's the best way to get there? And let's get there, right? And then if you need to veer from that path because traffic, weather, whatever, okay, you'll veer and your course correct. But nobody starts a journey without having at least a destination in mind. And that's what a strategy does. So once we complete the strategy, then we work on the brand and the platform. Then we think about, how do you take these ideas that these people have worked with, maybe they live in a book or a keynote or a workshop or what have you, and think about the right vehicles and modalities to move those ideas in and out of, so that they can get exposed to the right people to get the right impact they're looking for and generate the income that you're looking for. And then I think our secret sauce, Charles, is really this last piece, is that with a subset of our clients, we will stick around and own sales, marketing, distribution, product development, et cetera, because most thought leaders, and I'm painting with a broad brush here, most thought leaders are not very good at that, don't want to do that, neglect that area of the business. So yeah, they could be better at it. Sure, they're smart. They could choose to do that. Or what we find is the right partnership makes that decision a lot easier to say, hey, why don't let me do the things that I love, and you guys do the things that you're great, and everybody wins.
Yeah, it's like a Venn diagram between them and you. Do you find that most of the time the actual tools that you're using are LinkedIn newsletters and podcasts to get their thought leadership out there?
Those are common, but it really depends on where the thought leader is, where they're trying to go, who they're trying to reach, and how you're trying to reach them. In some, it might be trade journals. In some, it might be the academic circuit. For some, it might be speaking at Davos or TED. But yeah, LinkedIn's important. Podcasts are important. Those things are important, but it's not. It's a much more bespoke way of thinking.
Do you use AI on the strategy and execution level?
I would say yes and no. So the strategy, there's a little bit of help with AI. I mean, it's like I don't know anymore where the boundaries are, where AI is and where it isn't. So at some level, it just is. So it used to be not that long ago, maybe a year, 18 months ago, you had to make a concerted effort to say, oh, let me feed this into AI and see what it does. If you're writing a Microsoft Word, if you're in Adobe Acrobat, if you're in a Zoom call, AI is there. So to me, yeah, it would be foolish not to use it. The trick is how do you use it in a way that gives you a better outcome, that adds to the thinking, that increases the quality and the efficacy of a strategy that you're developing.
So do you prompt it with your secret sauce or data concerns on that level?
On occasion, yeah. I mean, there are things where I find AI is good for certain things and not good for other things, which is probably a function of me and my inability to get it to do certain things. But like, research, it's awesome. Having a sparring partner to think about, but I don't think it's good to just go to AI and say, "Okay, hey, I'm the thought leader. Give me a strategy on how to be a keynote speaker." That's not going to be particularly valuable.
Yeah, one needs to give it their secret sauce to get a great output. Do you still view books as a relevant business card, or do you feel these are mostly losing traction?
Well, that's a loaded question. So I don't think it's either. So a business card, I think in some instances, that's the purpose of a book. So to me, the better question might be strategically, when and where does it make sense for someone to consider writing a book, right? So in some case, and I think part of the problem is now there are people that put out books that might be a good book from a quality of the information standpoint, but it's a stupid time to do it relative to where they are. And then there are others that are putting out books all the time, and there's not a lot of there. So I think it's the right book at the right time, not for everybody. And then underneath that is what's the right model? What's the best way to publish that book? And how do you get the most out of it? Because the objective of a book should not be number of units sold. If that's what you're looking for, New York Times bestseller list or some sort of ego booster or whatever, that's not the way to do it. But every step of the way, from the research to the writing to the interviews to the launch of the book, et cetera, needs to be integrated to your business strategy. A book cannot be the tail that wags the dog. It needs to be subservient to an overall strategy.
Do you still read books? What does your learning stack look like nowadays?
Yeah, well, I am probably not, well, I should say not normal, but yeah, no, I read 2, 3 books a week, partly because that's what my clients write, and it's also a good way to see what's going on. There's still nothing like, listen, I love short form, I love infographics, but to sit down for a couple of hours and really ingest good ideas, high quality ideas, and get in that zone is far different than, watching a 12-minute TED talk. You can't compare the experience, but it's got to be good. There's a lot of garbage out there now, and I'm not going to waste my time plowing through 200 pages or 6 or 8 hours of drivel.
Right. I use AIs nowadays to filter through the garbage. Any book recommendations for us of high quality information for CEOs?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, it depends if you want to go to the classics or things that are more contemporary.
More
Yeah,
like
I
the
think
new,
more what?
the new, like, yeah, new AI stuff.
I've got to pull my Kindle up because I have a terrible memory for book titles. But
Yeah,
there's
I have a bunch that I'm listening right now, but yeah, not necessarily SEO related. But yeah, I'm falling in love with Green Lights from Matthew McConaughey. It's so good. Choose Your Enemies Wisely, Patrick David. My
yeah,
favorite business book that is not business, The Creative Act by Rick Rubin.
yeah.
Um, Starting Sonny Boy by Al Pacino as well. That's like I love. I don't get my business insights from business books anymore. Not sure about you.
Well, I think that's one place, but it shouldn't be the only place, right? So it depends on, The Art of War is a great business book, right?
I don't
Philosophy.
like it. It's
No?
but I mean,
Okay, well,
there's like wisdom in there, but it's like the 50 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. I think that has destroyed so many businesses. It's so like it's so Machiavellian, so aggressive. I'll do that in Art of War. The lesson number one is don't start a war, right?
right.
Which is
Well,
very smart.
but the trick is not to take an idea out of context. So Art of War is time and place, etc. But there are moments where you realize there are some thoughts in there that are applicable to the context. So to me, the wisdom is applying the right content in the right context, right? So that takes thought or
Don't
AI.
fight a war on a slippery slope. If you're
Yeah,
the one fighting one from a lower position, certainly
exactly.
remember that. On that same vein, I like Tao Te Ching. You know that one, Tao Te Ching?
Yep.
It's pretty good. It's pretty out there, pretty zen, pretty on the philosophy side. What podcast do you listen to nowadays?
Oh, so that I can pull up because I've got it right in front of me. I like Freakonomics. I like. Let me just pull up. What was I listening? I like Smart List is kind of funny these days. It's kind of interesting. I like Prof G. I like.
Isn't Prof G wrong on like 51% of everything he bets on?
I don't know the data on that, but that's probably true with most of these pundits. But he's just not. He's not a stock picker. He's got some macro perspectives on what's going on in the world. Like the one I was listening to earlier today when I was at the gym was around sort of the dopamine economy, that it goes back from the
Hmm.
opiate wars to tobacco to
Yes.
social media,
Yeah.
where
Coffee,
coffee, all that stuff.
chocolate.
Chocolate. No Stupid Question. I like Adam Grant's
Okay.
Rethinking.
Hmm.
What else? Think Fast and Smart. That's Dan Abraham. That's a good one. So, and the only reason I'm able to spout those off so quickly is because my phone is on my desk and my Kindle is not.
Your podcast, where do you want to scale it? It seems like it's a learning tool, a lead gen tool as well. Do you want to attract sponsors? Like, is the vision behind the podcast the same this year as it was last year?
Well, we changed the vision about a year and a half ago. So, well, more than that. Let me answer it a little bit differently. It has evolved. So originally, hey, here's an experiment. Let's put 30, 40 of these out into the world and see if it works. It works, right? So now we double down on it. Now we have tuned or fine-tuned what we're doing in terms of systems and processes relative to people wanting to be on that could potentially be clients. Was it last year? Yeah, last year we started, or year actually the end of 23, we started an experiment starting to license some of that content to others and turning it into learning modules. So you can find some of those on LinkedIn Learning. So I've never wanted to go the sponsor route because I want the control. And when I look at what they pay, it's just, quite frankly, it's just not worth the time. for a couple of bucks an episode. But licensing the content and turning them into learning modules is really exciting. I want to continue to do more of that. I don't, this is not a podcast that's ever going to be, 5 million downloads a month. I'm not delusional. We've got the right, when I look at, again, this is what's the metric. So we're at, I think, about 5,000 unique downloads a month, which is nice. That's probably top 10, 15%. I really don't care if that number is 5,000 or 50,000. What I care about is how much am I spending over the course of the year, divide that by how many net new clients that I'm getting, and make sure that number's a number I'm happy with. And by the way, and that's the extrinsic. Intrinsically, I love doing it. Like, what a great way for me to learn something and meet people. And I've made friends, relationships, connected people, I always joke around that for $100, you get a lot of people that will talk to you that are far smarter than you'll ever be.
You paid them? Is that what you're saying? You
No, $100 to buy a microphone. That's all it takes today. Yeah. And
I mean, there's a bunch of speakers that dedicate themselves to speaking. They're great at speaking, but their content not so much, because they stopped acting on what they teach, right? So when you invite a bunch of founders and CEOs that are in the weeds and you ask them honest questions, they need to be open-minded as well. The value that you get is humongous. Tell me a bit more about licensing your content to LinkedIn Learning. I haven't thought of that. Can anyone do that, or do you need to be accepted in their program? How does that work?
Yeah, I don't know all the ways to do it, but they approach. We have a relationship with them for a long, long time. So they approached us. They've done a couple of different things over the last couple of years where everything was video. Right, that was the traditional model of LinkedIn Learning, which is the result of where that company came from. It was LinkedIn Learning is really the current iteration of a company called lynda.com that LinkedIn acquired before Microsoft acquired LinkedIn. And their model was, bring people into the studio, produce these beautiful learning videos that might be 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, but very high quality, very high production values, et cetera. Now what LinkedIn realizes is, there's a time and a place for that. There's also a time and a place for audio-based learning, right? Not really a great idea to be in the car and watching video, although we've all seen people do it. Not really comfortable to be at the gym working out or swimming or whatever and watching video, right? So audio is a new format. The other thing that has changed is sort of this on-demand, this nano, this micro learning. So that's a different format that we also have on LinkedIn Learning, where I put out a bunch of, usually every week, a little short form 60, 90-second video on a question, a challenge to thought leaders to get them engaged. And we've put together a series of those into LinkedIn Learning. That they're calling them nano courses or nano learning. So that comes from relationships. I think you could probably try to pitch them, but they're going to make sure that not only is the caliber of your content at the highest level, but you have some sort of a followership and a name and a brand to protect the integrity of what they've got on the system.
Cool. And how do you select your guests? Is it potential thought leaders? I see you're not like only targeting founders and CEOs, you're targeting corporate as well. Who's the ICP for your podcast?
Yeah, so the guest for the podcast, the ideal guest, and we make some exceptions here and there, line up exactly to our client avatars: authors, thought leaders, academics, et cetera. So the corporate ones that you see, we have a practice area that works with large organizations. So we talk to people that own the thought leadership function inside of those large organizations, like Dell or 3M or Cognizant or IBM, et cetera. So to me, again, you could have a podcast for any reason you want. For me, I want to be talking to people that are representative of the client community that we work with, because then the conversations we have are relevant to others, and those guests might potentially become clients as they get to realize, how brilliant we are at what we do.
Do you feel corporate will scale in the AI age?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't. Why wouldn't it?
Because second level thinking, if you're working in an org, you're not knowledgeable about like all of its facets, you're not building a business, you're not like fully accountable, and you still get paid for doing something that is not fully aligned with reality.
Well, that's your point of view. I think there are plenty of people in organizations that are thought leaders in their field and in their space and in their discipline that could be practicing thought leadership either as a personal branding activity and or as a way to help their organization stand out from the competition, punch above its weight, show the marketplace in places like high tech financial services, professional services, et cetera, that they have a unique point of view, that they're smart, that the work that they do is high quality.
Right. It's just, I feel these frameworks would work in corporations, not in the startup world. And I think in the AI age that most of us are going to be freelancers and entrepreneurs. I don't think orgs are going to stick around to humans for long. They're mostly going to have AI agents, armies of them.
Let's see. I think I don't know if that'll be the case. I think a lot of the companies being launched using tools like AI are actually acquired by larger companies. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's easier today to launch something. I agree with that. Whether that means the death of the organization as we know it, who knows? You know.
Right. Yeah. They have a money moat for sure. They have piles of cash, and that's how I think most companies are surviving. Think of Google trying to adapt to ChatGPT and Gemini and how slow it is and how bad it is, or Apple not even in the AI race. I think, like ChatGPT is adding humongous value, and these giants are just surviving because of cash injection
Well, they also have a brand. They also have an installed user base. They also have other products that people,
and data.
yeah, and data. I mean, it's not,
Not in Apple's case, but yeah. Because
yeah,
they're
but they don't,
building on like not having data and like privacy.
right. But a company could survive for a long, long time based on the tailwinds and then decide to evolve and cannibalize. And, look at Amazon, right? So Amazon was a bookseller. Now most of the revenue is not coming from the boxes that get delivered to our doors every day. It's AWS, right? Like that's pretty cool.
Yes, yes. And Amazon's interesting with Alexa, which is so outdated when you compare it to ChatGPT's voice. I think
Yeah.
what's fascinating up there is competition, right? They cooperate, they compete, and that's still a science that's not very well understood nowadays. Maybe I should be a consultant and write a book about that.
There you go. Go for it.
Where can people find out more about you, Pete?
They can email me directly. It's peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. You can go to LinkedIn. You can go to our website, thoughtleadershipleverage.com. Where else? The podcast, YouTube, the usual places you'd expect.
Oh, it's Peter Winick and Charles Cormier for